What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I am Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, let me know what you've been playing.
Yeah, so I've been still dabbling in those PS4 games that I said were, enhanced on PS5. Ghost of Tsushima, God of War. I tried out Control again, the Ultimate Edition or whatever. And one quick note on Control. I'm surprised how many of the same bugs I experienced on PS4 are still there on the PS5 version. Don't know really what the deal is with that. I made sure I had the PS5 version installed and everything, and like the pause and unpausing bug is still there. Not bug, but that quick motion blur.
Yeah.
That happens. Little things like that are still there. It is super annoying that the trophy list got completely split up and it's different SKUs, so now I practically have to play the whole game again and stuff like that. But it is what it is. It's still a great game. I'm glad to be back in it. It's more interesting now that I'm kind of just skipping the story and just going straight to the gameplay. I'm doing a lot of things I missed the first time, like those random events where they're like, go to this section because the hiss are there running around. Like, I never did those just because of how obsessed with the story I was. So it's nice to be able to kind of just take my time and enjoy the gameplay, grind a little bit for more of the abilities and stuff. But yeah, I still really like that game. I'm really excited that it's there. I'm glad it was put on PS Plus, especially after the debacle with Ultimate Edition not getting an upgrade and that whole sort of nonsense that went down. So those are, those games are still obviously pretty great. Quick caveat, I did finally, for some reason, I don't know why, I downloaded GTA 5 on PS4. I've just been seeing so much about it, which is wild, with it being hitting record sales and all these different things. I'm like, it's been a few years since I've played GTA 5 at all. And I'm like, they're giving away that free, like, $1 million, I think, on GTA Online and for PS users until the PlayStation 5 version comes out. I'm like, I should jump in. I was like, I should just jump in. Let me see it. And so I did just play more the story just to kind of get the controls down, because as great as that game is, the controls take a little while for me to get used to. The way the running is, the way the walking is. There's the famous when you go to open a door, you walk in 2 circles, and what GTA 5 has become. So it's just kind of downloaded that just to kind of mess around, I guess. Like when I have 45 minutes to just be like, let me just spawn jets out and stuff. Since I'm not really like trophy hunting, I'll just do whatever I want, which is always fun. And that's what's made GTA 5 be such a big hit, was its sandbox sort of nature. So I've been enjoying that as well, on the side, just sort of something light. The other 2 games I've been playing, one's really out of left field here. I've been playing Total War Warhammer 2, which is a real-time strategy game. Number 3 was just announced. That's published by Sega. I've never been into these games. These sort of real-time, diplomatic, sort of tell my troops where to go. Don't know why. Just for some reason, I'm into this one. This one's way a little bit more fantasy-based. Dark elves. There's some phoenixes and all this stuff, and a lot of lore there. And the game was pretty cheap. I think it's on sale because the 3rd one's coming out. And I, for some reason, just got into it. I don't know what it is that just sort of got me there. It's hard to explain because it's not really exciting while you're watching it. Like, I can't stream this because you're not going to want to watch me scrolling around a field telling troops to go stand in trees. It's not exciting. But some reason that sort of micromanaging sort of style really fits. I just kind of a scratch I had right now. It's the same with like XCOM and all those other games. I'm not into those really until one hits that I just really get into. So XCOM was kind of that title. Somewhat like Rabbids versus Mario was sort of that sort of cover based, turn based thing. Just really stuck out to me. And some reason Total War Warhammer 2 is just kind of hitting it for me right now. It's just a weird game. It's a weird game. A lot of dialogue, a lot of like just telling your village. It almost feels very mobile game-ish in my aspect, because I was experienced the mobile gaming before these types of games, but I'm having fun with them. I'm having fun with it. It's there. Again, it is something I play when I kind of put a podcast on in the background and no one else is here and no one wants to watch over my shoulder because there's nothing to watch. There is some battles and stuff that gets exciting, but it's there. So that's a weird one for me. I don't know why, but it is happening. And the last game I've been playing, only obviously 2 days I've been playing it, is Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, or World, right? Not Land? Yeah, World. I forget whichever this one is. The Switch 3D Mario Land World. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it this time around. I did play this on Wii U. I think we played this together back then on the Wii U.
Yeah, a couple times.
And yeah, I think a couple times And I always thought there was something clunky about it and something kind of dragging. And they did announce in the early trailers where like, yeah, we kind of sped it up a little bit and the mechanics are just slightly tweaked and things like that. And the game feels so much better now. I'm clearing worlds out like crazy. Like, I'll sit down and I'll be like, let me do a couple of stages. I end up doing a whole like world. So I'm already on like world 6, I want to say. And it's a solid Mario game. I thought the game was always solid. Then I do think it's better now. It's weird because most like IGNs and those places are reviewing it worse now than it is back then. And it's a straight port. So it's really weird that they're doing that. They're saying the game is worse now, and they don't really have rhyme or reason for it. So it's a weird thing. I have not touched too much of Bowser's Fury, which is its own separate thing. Like, if you see the home screen, obviously I don't think you've seen the UI yet, but it's like Super Mario 3D World, and then you literally click left, and it's like almost like the collection, and it'll swap over to Bowser's Fury. So it's like its completely own game.
Oh wow!
And there's a lot of cool mechanics I'm seeing. It's like kind of an open world map. Bowser is like in the middle of the stage, and he goes into this Fury mode, which causes it to be nighttime, and it starts to rain. The music changes, enemies change, and there's like a lot of little things. And I like this mechanic. I have to assume this is definitely somewhat of a tech demo for this mechanic to be in other Nintendo games. I kind of really hope that this is somewhat in the form of in Breath of the Wild 2, where changing it up, there is like an event going on in the middle, whether it be a boss or whatever, that starts changing the landscape, changing weather and structures and stuff like that. And so I'm excited to see where this kind of mechanic goes. As a game, I haven't played too much of like Bowser's Fury itself because I heard it's only like 2-3 hours. So I'll want to kind of, when I finish with the main game, then I'll go to Bowser's Fury, probably knock that out in a sitting or two, and then I guess I'll be done with the game, retired. But the game's really nice. The games are sharp. I don't know what engine that Bowser Fury necessarily runs on. It's like a weird cross between like Odyssey and the 3D engine, so it's like a weird spot. The only thing about Bowser's Fury that really gets me, and I know this whole collection and this whole game is really about the cat suit. Like, we've known this, we all remember the original marketing and stuff. Everything in Bowser's Fury has a cat suit. I'm talking flowers have cat like ears, and like everything has cat ears, and I'm just like, I don't get it. I get it, but I'm like, why is there's cat ears? I'm like, go look at some screenshots, bro. There's like cat ears on everything.
That's
everything
weird.
everything design things in the back, cat ears, the bushes, cat ears. I'm like, why is there so many cat ears? But it's a minor, less of a complaint, more of just a weird observation. So that's where all I've been playing. A few little things there. The only other thing, and it just kind of crossed my mind, I did want to mention, is I did play PlayStation Plus's Destruction All Stars.
Oh yeah.
I did play this at launch. I don't know if I discussed it last week or not, but or did it just come out this week?
Yeah, I think it was just this week.
Yeah, I may have missed it, but so I played it, did the tutorial. I was feeling it. I'm like, okay, I was feeling the game. I'm like, this is cool. This is a game I did originally have pre-ordered at the launch for PlayStation 5. So I'm like, okay, got to save me $70. Let me tell you, they really saved me $70. Game is mediocre, I want to say. The gameplay wise, pretty fun. It's pretty addicting. And the characters are kind of cool. They're very much less Fortnite characters and more identity. I would actually compare them more to like Apex characters, where they're kind of like specific to each other. Very they have their own identity is my kind of thing. So the mechanics are great and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty fast paced. I have a lot of issues with the game. When you're actually playing the game, like you're in your matches, there's no music. It's a quick fix for me. I have Spotify downloaded. I put some music on, and I guess it's supposed to be amplifying like the destruction and the smashing of the cars. But it's just so quiet sometimes. And then there was a whole multiplayer issue that when you were going to go play online, it would auto add you to a PS5 party chat. Not that there was just like the lobby. Like your PS5 would ding that you were in a new chat, and so you'd have to go in there, mute everyone, mute yourself every single match. Now they did fix that, so now you can mute it from the get-go. You're not auto added to that. It was weird because then people were trying to add me and things like that, and it's just, obviously there were people, the first thing, like the game was not even loaded yet. As soon as it would be party chat, and people were just yelling vile things, and I'm like, whoa, So when I stream, I went to stream it, and I was like, well, can't do that because someone's gonna drop some words that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But the gameplay was there. Super. Now I have two main issues. Super microtransaction. They really want you. It's really like grind a lot for these costume pieces. And the issue is that they're not costume pieces, they're color swaps. So it's not like Fortnite has all these different skins. It's literally color swaps, which is super annoying. It's almost like $6 a color swap or something like that.
Yikes.
And to get the coins or whatever, it's you gotta grind out multiplayer for hours and hours. There's a somewhat of a single player aspect. I forget what they call it, challenges or something like that. Which has like some small cutscenes to kind of introduce the characters and their relationships with each other. The first one is the luchador guy, and you can play that, no problem. Every other one that's being released or releasing sort of in updates are behind a paywall. So you have to pay extra to get the single player content, which is completely ridiculous, completely unacceptable, and I'm not going to do it. You have to pay almost... The way the coins work and stuff, like you're paying $10 per storyline, and each storyline is only 5 like races, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Like they gave you one, and I thought I would unlock the next one, and then it's like, no, to unlock the next one you have to buy it with this that launches the PlayStation Store, and it's like $6.99, $5.99, and I'm like, oh, the single player stuff is locked behind a paywall, and I'm like, no. So that game is it's fine, but I'm sure with friends it's great and fun like that, but obviously I don't have many people who have PS5s, and not many people are going to want to play this. This game's time on my hard drive, on my SSD technically, is limited. It will not be there much longer because of the fact that they don't want me to play their game, pretty much. Yeah. They want me to pay extra. So that's all I've been up to in gaming-wise, which is actually more than I remembered. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, so I only got really 2 things to report that I played. And one of them I remembered while you were talking, so I was like, oh, I need to mention this. So I don't remember, or I don't know if you remember, but many months ago, on an episode of Retro Recap, I mentioned that there was a brand new Game Boy game coming out by a UK developer, and that they were selling like physical cartridges and everything like that. And I ended up buying the cartridge. All in all, with shipping and everything, it only cost me about like $30, but that was months and months ago, and I actually had like forgotten completely about that. And that finally did arrive, and I put maybe an hour into it, so I don't have a ton to report yet. But so far, very, very good. Really enjoying it. It's giving me a lot of like Game Boy Final Fantasy meets a little bit of the Game Boy Dragon Quest on Game Boy Color, and then with a look of Link's Awakening. So it's turn based. It's a Game Boy game, so it's very accurate to that time. The story is pretty good. There's not much to report on that front there. I like the characters. I like the battle system. So I like what they have given so far, and it's just nice to be able to play a literal Game Boy game for the first time again. And it was crazy. Like I took out my original Game Boy, like the original one, and popped it in there just to see it running on there. I popped it in my Game Boy Color, and then finally I'm actually playing it on my SP, so I can have the beautiful screen showing it. Mm-hmm. And there's some interesting like aspect ratio things. You could tell that they like very much obviously crafted it to not be stretched, because the text gets all weird and wonky when you full screen it on the SP. So I keep it small, keep things tight. So yeah, really good game so far. I'll have more to report, in the next few weeks once I'm able to put some more time into it. And then also coming off a Hitman, I still had kind of like a stealth itch, but I'm very specific on what stealth I like, because I like games that are crafted around that, not games that kind of ham-fisted in there and don't do it very well. So like when like GTA does it or like Battlefield does it, I like get super upset because I think it's terrible. But in a game like Hitman, I'm happy about it because I know that's how they designed the game and it's well crafted and the AI is responsive and it's good. And so I was like, you know what? I should go play basically the granddaddy of all stealth games that I did not give a full shake, which is Metal Gear Solid 5. Didn't really get the chance to play it back in the day when it came out. I got distracted with something else and I just never ended up going back to it. And I've basically been combing through my backlog to see what games that I have that I haven't played, to kind of kill some time until I'm able to buy games again. So I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 5. I'm about like maybe 3 hours in, but that doesn't mean much because the intro is so freaking long. Having a great time with it. Think it's really, really good. Runs amazingly on the PS5. Obviously, it looks amazing. Don't have a ton to talk about yet because I'm still on that first area. And like most Metal Gear Solid games, I don't think I 100% understand like what's going on story-wise, but I have like a rough idea of what's going on. But it's like a lot of things visually that happen that I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know who that is. I don't know why they're doing that or how they're doing that. So but I kind of just take it for what it is and do the mission as they tell me to. So I'm having a great time with that, and hopefully by next week I'll have dived in a little bit deeper so I can have more to say about the story, because as of right now, the plot elements have been kind of limited to me escaping that facility in the beginning, and now I'm kind of in the desert, I believe Afghanistan, and kind of just hitting Soviet outposts to, one after another, gathering intel so I can finally free my guys. So that's kind of what I've been doing in the game right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Metal Gear 5, I have such a weird relationship because so many of those mechanics I do love. It's the actual lack of Metal Gear stuff that is my problem. I've not played it since the launch, and since I beat it and got ending A, and then you have to do a bunch of extra stuff to get to like ending A plus or whatever, and it's kind of annoying. But yeah, the story aspects take a while to kick in and a while to even make sense. But I'm interested to see how you think about it, because that's one of those games where I see it all the time. I want to install it again, and then I just don't because I know what I have to go through.
Yeah, so far it's a thumbs up for me. So far.
Great game, great game mechanically. All right, so we can get into the stories now, and we have a CD Projekt Red story, but not one you may expect. So CD Projekt Red has been hacked. So quickly reading through some of the quotes and stuff. CD Projekt Red has been a victim of a targeted cyber attack in which hackers claim to have stolen internal documents and the source code for Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher 3, and more. The company announced the attack on Twitter, noting its internal systems have been compromised and that the hackers had left a ransom note. The ransom note was released to the public alongside the announcement, and it claims that the hackers have dumped full copies of the source codes for Cyberpunk 2077, Witcher 3, Gwent, and the unreleased version of Witcher 3, which is everyone's assuming would probably be the PS5 Xbox Series patch or release. The hackers also claim to have access to all of the company's documents related to accounting, administration, legal, HR, investors, relations, and more. The ransom note ends that by noting that CD Projekt Red has 48 hours to contact the hackers, or your source codes will be sold and leaked online. Your documents will be sent to our contacts in gaming journalism. Your public image will go down the shitter even more, and people will see how your company functions. Investors will lose trust in your company, and the stock will dive even lower. The note continues. Files stolen from CD Projekt Red in a ransomware attack revealed earlier this week have reportedly now been sold in the dark web auction. That comes from CD Projekt Red saying they were not going to, give into the demands, and they weren't going to, talk and sort of compromise with, thieves and terrorists. In a sense, dark web monitoring organization Kela provided The Verge in what it believes to be a legitimate file list from CD Projekt's Red Engine. Reports that an auction set up to sell the files has now been closed after a satisfying offer was made from the outside of the forum it was being held. The offer reportedly stipulates that the code would not be distributed or sold further. Cybersecurity account VX Underground also reported that it had heard the sale was completed. So what a weird time, especially for CD Projekt Red. That I was hoping they would kind of fade into the background while they work all these things out, and one of the worst things that can happen to a company like this happens. They get completely hacked. I'm less worried about sort of the source code thing because most people aren't gonna to what it is, what you have to do to play these sort of unreleased PS5 and stolen code and stuff like that can be tracked. My big thing is more the personal information that went out, the HR, the accounting and administration, employees, all that kind of stuff that was happened. And I hope that information gets, recuperated and it gets saved, and those people's, everyone's, safety does come first. Besides these projects that are being sold and released, so. My heart goes out to CD Projekt Red even more now. I understand they've been through all this stuff. I'm glad they didn't kind of give in to the ransom note because sometimes that just leads to worse problems. But my thoughts are with them because this is terrible news for them. And everyone who thought this was a joke at first, most of the people from CD Projekt Red have come out and said, no, this is not a joke. This is something serious that's going on. So what was your reaction, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought reading this is like, man, they cannot catch a break right now. Yeah, they're going through it over there, and it was wild seeing them go basically full like we don't negotiate with terrorists and just like publishing the thing. That's crazy. That's gangster. So wild for them. Hopefully everybody lands on their feet from this one. Exposing vulnerabilities like that in companies is always like a problematic thing, and hopefully nobody gets their information stolen or anything. I'm curious to see if anything actually amounts from this, especially with that sale of all that information. If people's information gets taken, or are there going to be money taken, or is this something just more on the tech side that this technology holds some weight and they're going to mess around with them like that? It seems like just a opportunity that they took to mess with this company that's already kind of in the bad graces of everybody right now. So it seems like they're trying to exploit that, and they felt like maybe if we get this information, CD Projekt Red is in PR mode right now, trying to fix the general PR and conversation around their company. So maybe if we push them right now, we can maybe extract some money out of them, out of the hopes that they don't want another bad headline. But it looked like they weren't playing into that at all. So good for CD Projekt Red on standing by their britches, and hopefully nobody gets screwed over in this process. And it's just wild to see like a dark web sale going on and stuff like that was completed, and the amounts of money that they were throwing around, we're talking millions of dollars here. It's pretty insane of what's going on out there. So I'm curious to see if, I doubt that this will be the end of this story that we hear about, but I'm curious to see how this kind of manifests in the future, and hopefully they're able to figure out something, and hopefully the source code doesn't lead to them having more vulnerabilities going forward. And because we've seen stuff like that before, like with like the Last of Us situation, where they got access to some information through like the engine or doing something crazy like that. So there are a lot of security risks once you have all your information out there, and especially once you have all your technology out there that they can now learn to exploit. What that manifest looks like going forward to a live game like Cyberpunk's going to be eventually with their online mode. So prayers to them, but hopefully they can figure something out.
Yeah, and it was just so unfortunate. If all the people, I don't want this to happen to any company, but a company that's already been through the ringer pretty intensely since December, this was really just an extra kick in the stomach.
Definitely. So I guess we can move on to the next story. This one was a very interesting one. It caught me by surprise. I didn't see many people talk about it, but for people who were paying attention, especially during that kind of like PS3 360 era, you guys remember a lot of this. So the canceled Iraq War FPS 6 Days in Fallujah is apparently getting resurrected for a 2021 release. So 6 Days in Fallujah, a military FPS based on real Iraq War battle, has been resurrected by a new developer and publisher after being canceled by its original publisher over a decade ago. So it's set for release on PC and consoles this year, and the new version of 6 Days in Fallujah is developed by Highwire Games, so that's a studio founded by Halo's lead designer and published by Victura. A tactical shooter, the game is based on events that took place in 2004 during the Second Battle of Fallujah in Iraq. The original 6 Days in Fallujah was announced in 2009 by Atomic Games, the publisher Konami, but there was a lot of criticism from war veterans and anti-war groups, and its proximity to real life and stuff like that, and they felt like it was insensitive, so they ended up canceling this game that, from what I understand, it was either really far in development or downright done. I'm pretty sure. And so it got canceled, and that was like a big thing, and everybody was like, oh my god, that game looks so cool, we're never going to be able to play it. So somehow, all these years later, like 11 years later, here comes this game, ready to play. So, Steve, did you have any interest in this game when initially announced, or do you have any interest in it now?
So, when this broke, they're like, oh, canceled game being released 10 years after. Was like the headline on, I don't remember if it was Twitter, wherever I was reading. And I said, what? And I'm like, of course this is something super, that title, without getting into what the game was, a canceled, unreleased game from 10 years ago being released. Now I'm like, whoa, I had to look into it. I vaguely remember some of this stuff. I do remember that Konami was the original publisher. I do remember the controversy that they're like, oh, a war game. So I remember vaguely its release being canceled, because the game, as you said, I think it was shown off in 2009, and then it was supposed to be released in 2010, and then this all went down. And I remember the studio ended up going bankrupt the year after, so I want to say it was like 2011, and that's so the game was thought to be dead in the water, to never be released, obviously. And so I remember the backlash. I remember the people saying, oh, how accurate or not accurate it was to 2009 was a very sensitive time, I guess, for talking about war, just because of all sides and everyone's opinions and all that kind of stuff. So it was really interesting to hear that this was back. I didn't remember the name until I started looking at some of all the publishing stuff and all that kind of things. I'm like, oh, it started to kind of click in my head what it was, and I'm like, I do remember this. It's very interesting that it's being released now. I'm glad it is, because this game was something worked on for a long time. I mean, Konami does kind of just publish anything now, but back then Konami didn't just publish whatever they want. So that at some point they believed in the game. So I am really interested to see what comes from this. What if, in a sense, were people overreacting to certain aspects? Like what does this do to the current state? And what does it do to a lot of these people who, a lot of these vets and stuff that put their life on the line, sometimes, and a lot of times, have issues with sometimes these war games getting too far over, not showing it accurate and portrayal enough. So I'm really interested, and I'm glad this game is coming out, though, because there might be a message in here that we need to see.
Yeah, and I do wonder kind of just how a 2009 FPS holds up being released right now. I wonder like how many tweaks they're gonna really do to it for this release. Like, is this a pretty major overhaul, or considering the fact that they've announced it now and they're planning for a 2021 release, tells me that they're not planning on completely remaking this game. So it seems like it's gonna be, for the most part, the experience that we probably would have gotten back then. So that's kind of interesting too. I'm curious to see what the pricing looks like and what the demand looks like, and does anybody can even care when this comes out? That I'm curious about. And that's another thing is, since this game was, canceled, we have gotten games that have done basically very similar things to what they were trying to do here. And it just seems like the culture generally around video gaming has shifted a lot, specifically in terms of like war games. Like, obviously, sensitivity to subject matter covered in games has existed, pretty much the entirety of the time that gaming has existed. I mean, they went through what they went through in the 90s with certain violent things. GTA went through it, so it happens with censorship versus sensitivity and stuff like that. But since this game come out, keep in mind, like, we've had that the no tagline Medal of Honor game that tackled very similar issues, that went through a little bit of controversy. We had Spec Ops: The Line, which played up, and that was 2012 or something like that played around with like the psychology of war. So they luckily have been able to explore that with limited pushback, and not that there wasn't bad headlines about it, but there was no real concerted effort to keep it from release. So it is one of those things that, who knows, maybe this was a little bit of an overreaction on the publisher's side, which is they probably could have powered through it, just released it anyway. Nothing really would have happened, realistically. There's games that get banned in other countries, especially places like Australia and stuff like that. But for the most part, in the U.S., things that want to come out are able to come out. to some extent. So I don't think the conversation is going to be as volatile this time around. Not to mention, I just feel like the amount of eyes on this game is significantly less than what would have happened in 2009. Because again, that was the height of like FPS fever. Call of Duty was just absolutely murdering back then, and so yeah, I think it's a very different dynamic right now. And it almost feels like they were going to release a game to way too many eyes back then, and now because of the amount of time that's coming out, it's almost like they're going to released to way too little, considering what they're actually going to try to do with this game. So hopefully they have a very interesting, compelling narrative to justify resurrecting this dead game. So I'm going to have my eyes on it, but I can't help but be a little bit confused as to like what this game is going to actually be able to accomplish all these years later, considering what FPSs are now, what has been done narratively in games since this game got canceled. Is it going to really tread any new ground by this point? I doubt it, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's where I'm interested. I'm really interested to see what is, for so long, and remember looking that up last night when I saw the story. For so long, a lot of people, like the last time this game was really talked about was in like 2011, and IGN said the game was going to be released, and that the game was done. So I'm curious to see, they're probably in there obviously fixing a few things, because you can't just release a 2009 game in 2021 without adjusting it. But I am curious to see what was this vision they had that they really wanted to release.
Yeah, because I mean it's just wild to see a game like this, and it just makes me wonder how much the general gaming conversation has changed so much since this time. Because I mean, keep in mind, not too long ago, Call of Duty World War II literally had you walking through a concentration camp. Yep. Like literally. So and they not that they got away with it, because they did it very tastefully and stuff like that. But like if that was back in 2009, do you think that would have been allowed to ride? Probably not. So yeah, things have changed a lot, and I can't help but feel that like this game's gonna come out, people are gonna play it, and people are gonna be like, really? Like, okay, so this is what was so controversial, like this little thing, because it's like there have been so many military conflicts that happened in real life that have been somewhat faithfully recreated in video games. I mean, almost every conflict probably, but maybe the Korean conflict they haven't really tapped into too much. But for the most part, I mean, we've seen stuff, especially with the newest Call of Duty. They've messed with like the Cold War stuff. World War II has been done to death. They've tapped into Vietnam stuff. So pretty much every major conflict has been touched, all the way up to the Gulf War with the Black Hawk Down game and on the PS2. Modern conflict right now has been explored to some degree pretty heavily through Call of Duty. So I doubt that they're going to be doing anything where they're going to be like, oh my god, we've never seen anything like this done before. It's just they got caught up with the bad PR back then. Konami got spooked, and they pulled it pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see when it is. So it's scheduled it just says late 2021 for release, but I'm assuming maybe at some point we'll get a trailer, see what this game looks like, even because I don't remember what it was even like stylized as. But we'll see. Either. We'll see. Hopefully, somewhat soon. So, going from something we want to see to something we really don't want to see, The Last of Us HBO show. We have probably the two biggest casting roles that we wanted to know. People wanted to know. I didn't want to know anything. But, of all the people in The Last of Us, obviously these two are going to be the pinnacle and really important. So, The Last of Us show coming to HBO has found its Ellie as in Bella Ramsey, best known for her playing Lyanna Mormont in HBO's Game of Thrones. Lyanna. She will be playing. She will not be playing Ellie. Before we get to the second part, I was okay with this. I can see it. Again, Ellie's role is easier to cast. I can't really judge off Bella Ramsey. The only thing I've ever seen her in was that HBO, and that's her role was not as prominent, I guess, as you would see. I'd say for other people to really get a gist of it. So I think she may be able to do this. I don't know. Maybe she can't. Who knows? So we'll see. So before we got the second casting, the Hollywood Reporter had confirmed Bella Ramsey's casting and cleared up the rumors on another bit of casting. True Detective star, I don't know how to pronounce this,
Mahershala
Ali Apparently, there was a rumor that he was offered the role of Joel, but they did confirm that he will not be playing Joel in the HBO series, though the actor was at one point circling the role. Later that night, for some reason, I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up in this other part of the article. I don't know why this wasn't just announced together, but it has been announced that Pedro Pascal will now be confirmed and is playing the role of Joel. Obviously, Pedro Pascal coming from Narcos, Mandalorian, his role in Wonder Woman, stuff like that. So it's an interesting time. So this show is obviously really happening. We knew this from when it was pitched to being greenlit into now we have the main two characters casted. So this show is going to happen for sure. I still don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel about, again, Bella Ramsey, I can't really judge. Pedro Pascal, he may be able to pull it out of nowhere. The roles I've seen him in, even not Mandalorian stuff like that, I don't know if he has. And again, actors maybe just be able to pull it out of nowhere and really work towards this new goal. I just don't see him having that edge that Joel does. So it's gonna be interesting. So what did you think of our new Joel and Ellie?
Yeah, so Bella Ramsey not mad with at all. The thing about Ellie is that she, though is very young, she has this kind of like commanding kind of a-hole energy to her, basically, where whatever she's thinking in her head, she has no problem vocalizing. And so I think Bella Ramsey is a pretty decent fit, because if you're watching Game of Thrones, Lyanna Mormont, she is a leader despite the fact that she's like literally a little kid, and she's leading all these soldiers, and she has a very commanding, loud presence. So I feel like she'd be able to bring that energy to Ellie in a real way. So I'm excited to see that. Pedro Pascal, I like him a lot. I really loved him in Narcos. I pretty much liked everything he did. Obviously, Wonder Woman was a questionable movie, but I don't necessarily put that on him. But yeah, no, he's a really, really solid actor. And I've never gotten Joel energy from him. That kind of like reserved, low-key, intense energy. Very rustic energy from Pedro Pascal, but I don't doubt his ability to maybe kind of channel that in a way. He's channeled energy in roles that I would have never guessed for him previously as well. So like if you would have told me the Narcos cop is going to be able to play a stoic Mandalorian character, I would have been like, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
And he pulled it off. So I won't write him off just yet. He's a brilliant actor, and I have faith in his ability to pull this off, but he's filling big shoes. The Last of Us, though a video game just kind of voiced, there is mocap and for that too, and it's just at such a high caliber of performance that the show, they really have big shoes to fill. But and I'm never the biggest proponent of these kind of like video game adaptations. However, I do really like what HBO's been doing lately, and they have an amazing pedigree going back to the early 2000s, late 90s. Their shows going back, The Sopranos, The Wire, they've had tons of amazing things over time. So, and then with their HBO Max and their movie deals and stuff like that, they're making the right moves. So the only thing that gives me faith is they're throwing some good names attached to these characters. Seems like they really do care about the narrative that they're setting and the quality that they're going to be hitting. And also, it seems like they're going to have the budget for it too, because HBO doesn't really play around in that regard. So far, I'm seeing things that I'm either neutral on or thumbs up. There's nothing that really spooks me just yet. So I'm gonna give it a shot, but I'm gonna need more information to see what specifically they're gonna try to do in this show, whether or not I'm scared or not about the success of it.
Yeah, when you look at the whole, the complete like saga that we've been going through with this casting, and it's set up the best it can. Neil Druckmann is on board, and a lot of people from Naughty Dog are there. You got to assume that Pedro Pascal is gonna do I guess not a sit down, but a Zoom call with Troy Baker and discuss this role, discuss it with Neil. So they're setting this up as probably as much. Same with Bella Ramsey. She's gonna sit down with what's the girl who plays Ellie?
Is it Laura Bailey?
No, maybe I don't. No, Laura Bailey played Abby. No.
Oh yeah, maybe. I don't
remember who called. I forget what that girl's name. I always confuse. But I'm assuming they're gonna have sit downs talking about this stuff like that. So that's gonna drive me nuts. Okay, it doesn't show up.
Ashley Johnson.
Anyway, Ashley Johnson. That's there we go. There we go. Ashley Johnson. So again, Bella Ramsey is gonna have a sit down with Ashley Johnson in a sense, and they may discuss that role. So I assume the show's gonna be probably the best it can be. You know, I think it's gonna be way more. It's gonna be way more to hopefully more. Or I feel like it's gonna be more to what The Last of Us is to us already, than like what Uncharted's gonna be. Again, I'm not trying to throw shade at Uncharted and Tom Holland and stuff like that, but I feel like this is probably going to be a lot more to the source.
Definitely.
Especially when you have the creator on board, directing, helping writing, and stuff like that. And so it's kind of the best case scenario. The rest is really up to them. It's really up to them now where they take this.
Yeah, definitely. Of all the adaptations that have been announced in different capacities, this one looks like it's probably going to be of the highest quality. And so, yeah, I have the most faith in this. It seems like it's probably going to be one of those things where, like, the more familiar and the more love you have for the source material, the more critical you'll probably be about this. But it'll be one of those things that, like, outside observers or people who, like, very casually played it or maybe haven't touched it since, you know, the original one back in the day, will probably love it. It'd probably be only the people who, like, have ran through the first one, ran through the second one, very familiar with the voice actors and the performance and the story, who are going to be picking it apart. Naturally, we've seen stuff like that for like Watchmen, for example, who like the people who are really familiar with the comics are like, oh, they messed A, B, and C up, but to the outside person, they're like, oh no, it seems great to me. So I'm expecting it's going to probably be something like that, where we're going to be going through this with a fine-tooth comb, where the average consumer would never know, and they just see a really high-quality zombie experience, where this is probably going to be the most refreshing adaptation of zombies they've seen probably since Walking Dead. So yeah, it's exciting times. I'm curious to see what the timetable looks for this as well, and when they actually start filming, because they just did casting. So I would imagine a lot of pre-pro is probably done, and they're going to start filming maybe summer or fall or something like that. So we're probably not going to see this for quite some time. But it's cool to see some progress in there, and this is not just going into development hell like Uncharted has been in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I guess we can move on to our next story. And this is a little bit of Microsoft news. We haven't heard too much from that whole ecosystem for quite a while. And for me, as someone, you know, and you, who we have Xboxes, so we want something from them. And I keep my eye on, like, any Halo news, nothing for me. Okay. Finally, we got a little bit of a Microsoft news, which is not necessarily good or bad news. It's kind of just some things moving around. So legal documents indicate that Microsoft intends to create a wholly owned subsidiary of Vault, called Vault, to complete its ZeniMax media acquisition deal. It's not clear if ZeniMax will be known as Vault after the deal closes, so we don't necessarily know if this is like a rebranding or what, but there is a formal subsidiary of Microsoft that's going to be formed to kind of go with that whole Bethesda deal thing. The EU is currently deciding whether to approve the $7.5 billion acquisition that was revealed back in September 2020. Documents seen in the European Union law website Eurlex refer to the logistics of the acquisition, mentioning that merger pursuant to which a newly created Microsoft subsidiary Vault will be merged with and into ZeniMax. So this is a lot of kind of like legal mumbo jumbo and stuff like that, but it seems like there's some progress being made in that kind of Bethesda ZeniMax acquisition deal, and that they're kind of carving out a chunk of Microsoft to formally kind of ingratiate them into the family, which is very, very interesting. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions that everybody has as to what this looks like when all is said and done, and what that truly means for Bethesda and ZeniMax's output. And that's something that only time's going to really tell, and maybe we'll get a formal statement kind of detailing their release schedule and how everything's going to go going forward, and what the natures of this deal is. But when you dealing with like corporate entities on this scale, we're never going to get 100% of the information, and obviously they're not going to sit down and give us profit splits and all that crazy stuff. But did you have any thoughts when you heard this story?
Yeah, it was interesting. Every step they're taking, this is a huge step actually to confirm this thing, because they announced this deal. I do think they announced this deal a little too prematurely. Obviously that was to hype up some Xbox Series information. No matter what they say, this was definitely announced too early, because they still have to. It still has to be approved. Technically, in a worst case scenario, this could all fall apart. I think it's pretty much set in stone now that Microsoft's going through the time of like creating a subsidiary vault and stuff like that to merge it into ZeniMax and stuff like that. So that's not something we haven't seen before. The same thing goes with, I think we talked last week, Embracer Group and THQ Nordic, buying people out, and with the Gearbox sort of thing. So I feel like it's on its way there. Again, people are still kind of curious on what this means logistically for specific companies and games, and the Bethesda and the ZeniMax and all that. But you got to assume that this deal's probably being close to officiated. I'm glad. I'm also kind of getting tired of hearing about Microsoft's buying them out. I'm like, well, let's get this official and let's start seeing. And I know it's gonna be a while, but let's start seeing some product of this. What did you spend $7.5 billion on? To do what? Let's see, because we know the first few games are not going to even be on Xbox technically, and I know that's contract wise. Obviously, the games existed before, but it's like, what does this actually mean for the ecosystem, and what does it actually mean for us who aren't investors, who aren't dealing with this kind of money? What does that mean for us is what I'm still interested in, and excited to see what Vault ends up actually being. Is this just a name to carry money and shares and people around, or does that change the ecosystem that we know in ZeniMax, Bethesda? But it's it's interesting to see what this may end up being.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, surprise, surprise, Microsoft and Bethesda announced something earlier than they probably should have. I would have never imagined those two companies announced something before they should.
Yeah, I think back to it, I'm like, man, they really announced this so early. Again, the deal wasn't even official. I know someone somewhere probably was like sweating when they saw that Microsoft just announced it too early. Like, hey, they didn't hold their horses, but we'll see. But again, that is their specialty.
I wonder if they announced it before the deal was finalized, but after the kind of like the point of no return. So like it was deep enough into their negotiations where nobody's pulling out at this point. Mm-hmm. So it's safe to announce it. But yeah, the deal was far from actually formally being, finished. But because I don't know if they're already like contractually locked into each other, that like if Bethesda was like, we don't like the stipulations, we don't like the profit split, we're out of here. Could they even pull out at this point? I don't know. I don't know nothing about that stuff, but I'm just curious as to what specifically on that kind of negotiation timeline did the announcement actually occur on. Some people think that it's very on the early end, like they entered into talks with each other, they came down to studios, and it's like, let's just put it out there. Or some people think it is much later and they're just kind of finalizing stuff. And me, I tend to be like, they're probably somewhere in the middle where it's just after the point where comfortably they could say, okay, nobody's pulling out at this point, but there's still a lot to discuss as to what this looks like and what legally can be allowed. Because again, when you have massive mergers like this is stuff that needs to be approved by regulatory committees and stuff like that, especially once you're dealing with like other international companies and stuff like that. So very intriguing stuff.
Yeah, and hopefully that's another thing we'll probably hear from soon when it's all official. I'm sure Microsoft will do a little celebration tweet. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. All right. So the last story for today: a massive EA acquisition. So Electronic Arts will acquire mobile game studio Glue Mobile for a weighty $2.1 billion. The company's announced on Monday, making it one of the most costly video game acquisitions in history. Glue Mobile is, as the name implies, a mobile game development studio with a heavy-hitting franchises to name Diner Dash, Disney Sorcerer's Arena, WWE Universe, Tap Sports, Baseball 20, Kim Kardashian Hollywood, Deer Hunter, and others. So EA's been talking about how they want to sort of move into that mobile market. Obviously, it's huge, especially in other regions in Japan and China and stuff like that. Mobile gaming is crazy huge over there, and obviously these apps print money. When you look at this stuff, all the microtransactions that are going in the game. So obviously EA, I'm surprised it took them this long to acquire their own studio, to acquire a studio to have their own foot in the door with this. So none of the games really speak to me. Mobile gaming is really, really tough. It's not really what it was before. I think it doesn't really hit the quote-unquote hardcore gamers. This is obviously towards... It's a lot more the younger crew and sometimes the older crew that are playing these games and spending actual money and stuff like that. I can't remember the last time I spent money in a mobile game, but I'm curious if they can do it tastefully. EA's known to not be the most tasteful and consumer-friendly with their microtransactions in their mobile games and their games in general. So I'm curious to see what comes from them, especially with that backing. So how was your little reaction to this?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, this specific, like, Glue Mobile is so not my world, and I don't play any of these games. I don't play the phone games pretty much at all. Every once in a while, I'll find a little phone puzzle game I might mess around with or something like that, but it's just very much not my world. So I can't really even comment about whether this is a good or bad acquisition. But to be honest, if you're spending $2.1 billion on anything, you have seen the data to justify that purchase. And they obviously, if there's one thing I can say about EA, is I have faith in their ability to make money. And if there's one industry that you can comfortably microtransaction the hell out of to little to no pushback, it's the phone space, because these games are already, like, I mean, cancerously infested with microtransactions to the point where some of them are borderline unplayable. So I don't think EA will have any problems, PR or whatever, introducing more ways to monetize these games, and they're gonna have little to no pushback again, because the demographics that they're going to be tapping into, as you mentioned, yes, there's an older crowd, and then there's just a massive younger crowd that just pumps money, and then obviously there's the whales they talk about, which are the percentage of gamers that funnel thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're a small percentage, but the amount of money that they funnel into these game industries keep the lights on at these places. So
yeah, that's true.
So I think this is actually going to really, really work for EA, more so than pretty much any of the other deals that they have put money into. I think this is going to have pretty major returns. They predicted for a long time, like, is mobile gaming going to die? Is it going to take over? But other than, I mean, whatever you want to say about the US, the moment you look abroad, you can see how expansive this industry is. And it's only getting bigger and getting serious. And obviously, for every cheap Diner Dash-ish kind of game that is killing it in the App Store, there's stuff like Genshin Impact that also has a huge online and mobile presence as well. So it's a healthy space. People are making money on it. I have zero interest in any of these games whatsoever, but I don't think this is a dumb acquisition. Again, if you're talking $2.1 billion, they obviously see something that can justify burning that amount of capital. Because EA is not a stupid company. They've made some bad choices, but their choices have almost always come from the way they choose to monetize things. And now they're going to a place where they can basically act with impunity about the way they monetize things, because they're just they've said, like, what, a race to the bottom, basically. Who can get their app out the cheapest, and then just extract as much money after the fact, after the download happens. So it's just an entire different profit model than the console space and the PC space. So it's basically like, as far as I'm concerned, go have a blast, enjoy it, because I want no parts of that. So
yeah, you're not gonna get a cent from me.
No, it's not for me.
It's still it's so much money too, though. $2.1 billion. As a reference, I always use it as a reference. Sony paid $229 million for Insomniac.
Yeah.
So that just puts things in perspective. How much EA is expecting to. EA will also shut a studio down without a blink of an eye.
Yeah, so. And the crazy thing, that just to put it in more perspective, is the fact that, yeah, like, Sony bought Insomniac, which is the most amazing deal in our world, and we love their products and we consume their products, and I can almost guarantee that EA is going to make so much more money with this acquisition than Sony makes with Insomniac. No doubt about that. It's just an entirely different world, and the amount of money generating just billions and billions and billions of dollars on a yearly basis is just incredible, as opposed to the console space, where they're making good money. Don't get it twisted, but they're not making mobile money, period, because the amount of money that it takes to even develop the products at Sony compared to what it costs to make these apps, I mean, the margins are night and day. So I think this is like a, what do they call it, like a partnership made in hell type situation, where it's just like they're perfect for each other. So have a blast.
Absolutely. We'll see.
So 5 stories. That was episode 43 of the podcast. We're going to be back next week with a brand new episode for you guys, and hopefully some more news, and see what's breaking. We're heading into news cycle, so we're in the mid-February, which means that once we cross the next few weeks, that's when all the delayed games are finally going to start coming out, and we're going to be properly into next gen, and hopefully, for the love of God, Xbox puts out something please. I'm begging you guys.
Yeah, that's not the medium.
I want to put my Xbox to use with something new and not just play games from the 360.
That's true.
Like, please, Xbox, give me something new to play on my $500 machine.
At least some date. We did just get a Ratchet and Clank date, so summer.
Yeah, so Sony's about to start their full output.
So
and
they're
Microsoft has yet to begin. Sony's coming back after dropping some first-party stuff, and Microsoft has yet to fire once.
Yep.
It's concerning me, Steve. I don't want another Xbox One. I'm very concerned.
It's starting to get worrisome.
But yeah, I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you guys next week.